Okay, welcome to another episode of Xtra Bytes. And today we have our wonderful speaker who is one of the top wedding photographers from India. And his name is Arjun Kartha. And if I have to give you some brief introduction about him, and we are trying to move away from landscapes for some time. And it's going to be a different session again today because I will be the only one who will be talking today, and there's no other panel. So I'm going to have an interaction with Arjun Kartha, solo kind of interaction. So giving you some brief introduction about Arjun. So Arjun thinks himself to be a kind of non-wedding wedding photographer. That's quite an interesting kind of introduction that he gives. Because he loves to create images that are anti-thesis of typical wedding photography. And that is interesting. I think it will be interesting to talk about this. With more than 2 decades of experience with the camera, Arjun is a master craftsman and nationally acclaimed photography instructor as well. So with his relaxed and friendly approach to working with to-be married couples, Arjun is able to integrate and truly become a part of the wedding family and create photographic stories from an insider perspective. And I think that's interesting. And what is most interesting is that Arjun loves wedding food. I think that's another kind of cuisine that probably is talking about, and can often be found at the chaat counter with gol-guppas. And he is an ex-advertising executive. He gave up his successful marketing career to do what he loves, creating images of love and togetherness, along with his better half, Prerna, who is also a creative director. They run a company, Twogether Studios. So there's Together with a W in between T and O. So they are obsessed with creating fun, offbeat, contemporary wedding stories, widely regarded as amongst the top 5 photographers in India. They, I think, pioneered candid wedding photography in India from first wedding that they shot in 2008. I think that is phenomenal. That is remarkable, knowing about such a wonderful photographer. And welcome, Arjun Kartha. Thank you for accepting the invite. Thank you for joining us here, accepting to talk here and share your experience. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Very happy to be here. Hi, everyone on the channel Exploring Light. I think you have a really great mentor here, Mr. Jesse Oberoi. I've known him for quite some time now, and he's one of my favorite photographers. So I'm very honored to when he called me and said, please come and join us on this show. So very, very happy to be here.
That's fantastic, sir. And the first question that I would want to ask is that, do you always keep one person in your team extra other than your normal team who could replace you when you are at the gol-guppa counter?
Sir, everyone can replace me. I am, just a very, very small part of my entire team. I am always found at the gol-guppa counter. So I'm always goofing off somewhere in the back. My team is the one who actually does all the hard work. but seriously speaking, yes, of course. I mean, we always build in a lot of redundancy into what we do. But jokes aside, it's totally a team effort.
All right, that's fantastic. So you and your wife Prerna have this company called Together Studios, and so just some idea into did you became 2 before Together Studios, or you became 2 after Together Studios?
Well, that's actually, sir, I must compliment you. That is such a very insightful question. I've done a lot of these live sessions, and this is the first time someone is asking me that question. So I'm actually have to go to think and give you that answer. But I think it was I think if I look back now, we became 2 after Together Studios, probably just a little bit after. In fact, the genesis of how this started was, we in the beginning, right in the beginning when we started shooting weddings, it was under my name, Arjun Kartha Photography, which is why our website even today is still called Arjun Kartha Photography. But what happened was then, once we became 2, we were dating a while before we got married, and then we figured that this is something that that we would like to do. So I think it roughly coincided at the same time. So Together Studios was, the idea that we are together, our clients are together, everyone's together. So the idea was to create something that celebrates that union between two people, whether it is a husband and wife, whether it is a photographer and a subject, or whatever it is. But the idea was to try and create something that builds on that bond between people, and that is how Together Studios was born.
That is fantastic. So you are a non-wedding photographer, and found having gol-guppas. Your wife is, your better half is a creative director. So who actually is in control? Who is controlling the leash?
Definitely, sir. I'm sure you're a married man, so you know that it is always the missus who is controlling the leash. But from an operational perspective, what we figured out was that, see, in a partnership, okay, now everyone needs to play to their strengths. Okay, now many people, they start a photography company, as a solo entrepreneur. I mean, you are one person, you start a company as one person, and you have to then take up the entire load. Now obviously that is a very difficult thing to do. So in the beginning, when we started, it was obviously a challenge in terms of what should I do, what should Prerna do, what is the optimal division of strengths, as it were. But then what we realized was, there was a lot of duplication that was going on. So I was doing the same thing, she was doing the same thing, we were checking the same photos, we were shooting the same things, our styles were becoming similar. So what we realized was, we have to, cut it down the middle and sort of try and figure out, what should I do, what should she do. Now, if you imagine it as a regular business, now most, let's say like a partnership firm. Now, when there are two directors of a company, each director should ideally bring to the table something new that the other director doesn't have. So that's what we did. So we sat down and we made a list, and we said, okay, let's try and figure out, what is what and who does what. So what we realized was that, between photography and cinematography, so Prerna sort of heads the cinematography department in Together Studios. So she looks after all the videos. She's the main director for most of our wedding films, and even the ad films and commercial films that we make. And that is how we've sort of bifurcated, between the two roles. So let's say, like, I sort of look after most of the photography, the business aspect of things. I mean, at the end of the day, running a company is, there's a lot of business related matters that ideally I would not like to do. I would just like to take my camera and shoot. But unfortunately, there are many things. There's accounts, there's billing, there's invoices, there's taxation, there's returns, and so many things that unfortunately are part of running an organization. So those are the things that I look after, and Prerna looks after the creative things. So she is fortunately, she doesn't have to look after all these boring details of running a company. So that is how we bifurcated. So in a nutshell, I look after most of the photography related jobs and items, and Prerna looks after most of the cinematography related tasks. But that is broadly how we do it. So we try and not step on each other's toes. We try and make sure that we have separate functional areas, and that way I think we're both playing at our strengths, and we're making sure that we are both playing to win.
That's remarkable, because I think I read it somewhere, or Prerna, before all this happened, she was into accounts of some company.
She was advertising. She was part of advertising.
All right.
She was an account manager at an advertising company.
Okay, account manager. All right. So, and you were also into advertising, right?
Yes.
And this advertising thing, we've been interviewing many people, even in landscape photography, and even in kind of documentary and advertising photography. Most people have left their advertising field and become photographers. And I think that does it really help in terms of your being creative in the photography field and create a different market for yourself?
I think it does. See, I'll tell you why. Now, when I first joined advertising, I think this was in 2003. I had just finished my college. I studied computer engineering, and I'm actually an engineer. So, at that time, if you remember back in 2000, this is when the IT bubble was, really, it had not, been punctured yet. And everyone was talking about IT, and everyone was talking about computers. So back then, there wasn't really much career counseling that really happened at school. I mean, everything was pretty basic, right? So believe it or not, I had no idea that I could actually become a professional photographer and I could actually make a living as a professional photographer. So I didn't know what to do. So I did engineering. So in engineering, the one thing that I took away from all of that is, boss, ye nahi karna. Matlab, this is not, this is not my cup of tea. There's no way that I can do this. Somehow I managed to pass the course, and I was given a stamp that said, okay, you are now qualified to, be an engineer. But that is not what I wanted to do. So what happened was, as a stroke of luck, someone I knew introduced me to someone they knew, and they said, you know what, there's a job in an advertising agency, and it's a very entry level job, but you might be interested. So I went and I spoke to them, and somehow I don't know why they chose me. I had no skills whatsoever. I had absolutely no qualifications, but they said, you know what, we'll give you a chance. You come and join. So in advertising, that is where I actually had the good fortune to meet many, many, many professional photographers, who were shooting architecture and abstract and ad campaigns and ad films and all those things. And that literally blew my mind because I had no idea before that such a career was actually possible. I mean, how can you actually, because I don't know, today is a very different age. Today,
Yeah.
with the internet and with so many things, there are so many career options that are open to you. But back then, in those days, 2001, 2002, who knew, right? Who knew that something like this would be possible? So that really blew my mind. And I was obviously, making notes, and I was looking at what they were doing and how they were doing it and what kind of setups they had and what kind of cameras they were using. And I soaked up everything like a sponge, because for me, this was so interesting to be given the opportunity to be part of an ad shoot, to be part of a real estate shoot, a model shoot, catalog shoot. And, I absorbed everything from there. And I think that is how things started. So by, the stroke of luck and by God's grace, he put me in advertising. And, that sort of gave me so much exposure to the world of professional photography. And that is how I realized that professional photography is something that actually can be done. And that is when I started learning. So of course there was no Google back then, and there were no photography classes, no colleges, no webinars like this one where you could actually listen to a photographer. So everything came from books, and I started learning from books, and I started asking a lot of silly questions to the photographers I was working with. And one thing led to another, and then I think I sort of learned just enough to be able to pick up the camera and shoot in manual mode for the first time. And that is how this journey started. So to answer your original question, yes, I think advertising, is a sort of industry like no other industry, which sort of gives you access to the world of professional photography. Had it not been for that, I probably today also would be sitting maybe at an Infosys or a Wipro, and sitting behind a computer and writing some software. But that is how it happened.
That's interesting. So take us through your journey in photography, and how did you get into photography? When did you decide? So you were already working in the advertising field. And so how did you decide to get into photography, and why wedding? Why only wedding? So, and which year did you do that? And so just take us through that.
Okay. So here's how it happened. Okay. Now so cut to 2003, 2004, I was a young, shall we say, executive at an advertising firm. And, I had the good fortune, like I said, of going to many shoots and seeing how things are happening. So I bought my first camera. It was a Nikon, I think D70. Okay, that was it was a very state of the art DSLR at that time. I saved up a lot of money, and I bought that camera with an 1855 lens. So sorry, an 1870 lens. And I was like, wow, I've got a professional camera. So as it so happened, for many shoots that we were part of, and now clients today are very much like clients in those days. Sometimes there was no budget. Okay, sometimes the client said, listen, we don't have much money, there is this project that needs to be shot and we don't have much money. So of course, opportunistic person that I am, I said, you know what, don't worry, I'll go and shoot it instead. So that is how those baby steps into advertising photography started, because I sort of went ahead and said, you know what, if it's a simple shoot, don't worry, I'll do it. So those campaigns suddenly started coming to me. So suddenly I found myself shooting real estate, shooting interiors, shooting product. Of course, I had no knowledge back then, but somehow I said, you know what, I'll do it. And I think I was lucky. I was able to get a few usable shots from each campaign. And so that is how that exposure to professional photography started. So then one thing led to another, and one thing led to another. And most clients would say that, it's okay, Arjun, you know what? Why don't you shoot it instead? And we'll give the assignment to you. And that is how that foothold into professional photography started. So in those years, I think from 2004 to 2008, I was shooting this. I was shooting product. I was shooting real estate. I was shooting anything, anything that came across my plate, whatever it was. I didn't say no to it. And but that taught me a lot about how professional photography actually works and how this field works. So, now cut forward to weddings. Okay, now in 2008, yeah, I think by this time most of my friends knew that, yeah, this guy is a semi-professional photographer and he knows what he's doing. So, so one of our friends was getting married, because we must have been what, 25, 26 at the time, and one of our friends was getting married, and she said, you know what, Arjun, we have a professional photography studio who's doing this, but why don't you come and take some pictures? So I said, "Yaar, मैं क्या करूँगा? I mean, वो तो expert है. I'm just a novice." But she said, "No, no, doesn't worry. You come." I said, "Okay." So I went and I took some pictures. And honestly, even today, if I look back at that, I think those pictures were really bad. Okay, I took some really, really bad, horrible pictures, and I was not at all happy with it. But I showed it to her nonetheless, and I said, this is what I've taken, and if you like maybe one or two pictures, you tell me which pictures you like, and I'll edit them for you. But somehow she was, very, very impressed. She said, "Wow, this is amazing. I mean, these pictures are really good." And honestly, I didn't see what was good about them at all, because they were really bad. But they were appreciated. And she said, "You know what? This is really nice, and you should do this for a living, and you should make a career out of this." So this happened once, this happened twice, this happened three times, because we had a lot of friends getting married. And so it happened a couple of times. And then so Preda and I sat down and we said, you know what, if people are telling us that this is good, then maybe we should make something out of it. And if you remember, back in those days, wedding photography really wasn't, shall we say, a natural choice for a photographer. Most people, who were photographers, wanted to do fashion, they wanted to do, product and things like that. So we said, you know what, let's try. So we did, and that's how, what. So it was just us. It was just Prerna and me in the beginning. It was just us. We went and we shot weddings on our own. We didn't have a team. We didn't have an office. We didn't have anything behind us. Our office was our bedroom. We had a spare bedroom, and that was where we kept the editing system and things like that. But that is how that journey started. And slowly, 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 I think in 2012 we opened our first office. This was in a place called Shahpur Jat in Delhi, and Shahpur Jat at the time, it was a big wedding hub. So we figured that this is a good place for us to be. So Shahpur Jat was Studio version 1, Studio Mark 1, and there we grew. So the first, I think we had one employee. We just had one employee in the beginning. It was just Prerna, myself. We had a peon.
He was your kit lens.
And yeah, he was my kit lens. Yeah, totally. So then slowly, 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 things started moving out. Today we are on, I think, Office version 4. And today, luckily, we've grown. I think we are a team of around 18 people. And, we have everything in house, whether it's the photography, whether it's the cinematography, whether it's the editing. But obviously, it took a long time to get here.
All right. So that's very interesting and inspiring so far, whatever you've shared. And one question which keeps coming to our mind is that you just mentioned that wedding was not the obvious choice during those days. My question is, was photography the obvious choice?
I would say yes. Okay, because what happened was, till this point, I still had a full-time job, as it were, as a as a full-time, like a job apart from this life. So my last job, actually, I quit advertising and I joined IBM. So I was actually a marketing manager at IBM, and it was a good job. It was a good life. I had a fairly senior position. I had people reporting to me. It was a very good salary. In fact, in those days, I think I had the best salary that people could ask for. But something was missing. I probably am one of those people who see. I firmly believe that photographers are born. You are not. This is not something that you can learn. You either have it or you don't have it. Like most artists, like if an artist like let's say Rembrandt or Van Gogh or someone, these are people who were chosen by God and said that let us take this gene, this creative gene, we'll put it inside you, and you take this and you go out into the world. So I think that gene was always inside me, and I probably did not recognize it, and I did not did not learn how to tap it until that point. But I knew something was missing. So in my regular marketing job, as an employee of, let's say, a very big organization, which was a dream job at the time, I felt that this is not my potential, and this is not what I was meant for. This is not why God put me on this earth and said, this is what you should do. So at the time, photography really was what kept me sane, and this is what actually kept me inspired. So at the time, it was a no-brainer. It was an absolute no-brainer. Obviously, it was a very difficult choice from a financial point of view, because if you consider that you're taking your regular steady income, which was a good income, and you're throwing it out of the window and said, okay, now boss, now no salary, nothing, nothing at all. It was a difficult decision, but it was the natural decision. So yes, I think photography was the natural choice back then, and I'm glad we did it.
That's fantastic. You're glad you did it. That's why we are talking today, and it had to reach this point. And okay, now, did you face any challenge to your decision within family? Was there some resistance to that decision of becoming a wedding photographer? Um, if not immediate family, if not your parents and all, maybe your relatives or your friend circle, uh, were they not very convinced on your decision?
So I would say yes and no. So luckily, both Prerna and I, we come from fairly broad-minded families. They sort of trusted us, and they knew that we would obviously make the right decision. However, truth be told, see, wedding photography, and like I said, back then was not understood the way it is now. So in 2008, we used to go to, let's say, suppose I had to introduce myself, and someone said, "What do you do?" And I used to say, "I'm a wedding photographer." So, there would always be the slight, like, really? Why? There would be the slight question mark that people would have. Even my parents, they said, "Why wedding photography?"
वो कहते हैं ना,
You
वो
know,
जो simple चीज भी, when you put that exclamation mark, अच्छा शादी shoot करते हो?
that's the one. That's the one.
मैंने कुछ
कि
गलती
घर में सब कुछ ठीक है क्या? So I mean, see, I would always patiently understand, and a lot of people, I think, they genuinely did not mean any disrespect. I think it was a genuine question, because at that time people were chasing MNC jobs, and people were chasing MNC security. And people would ask me, "Yaar, you've left a job at IBM, like, wow, people die to get into IBM, and you've left this job at IBM, and tumne shadi photography start kar li. Like, what is this?" So, I mean, sure, it happened. I mean, it happened a lot. It happened to a lot of people. But obviously, as the years passed, I think today, the entire reaction has changed. So today, if I say, I shoot weddings, they're like, "Arre, tum to bade paise kama rahe hoge?" which of course is very far from the case, very very far from the truth. But yeah, but I think today the profession has got a lot more acceptability, probably due to the coverage by the media and coverage by magazines and newspapers and TV, and not just that. I think also because people have now been exposed to quality wedding photography, because today everyone knows somebody who knows somebody who's got married, and what they'll do is they'll put their photos on Facebook, they'll put their photos on Instagram, then you go through it, and then people sort of understand the quality difference between what is available today versus what is available, let's say, back in 2007, 2008. Because in those days, the entire style was much more basic. It was much more templatized. It was much more, and I mean, the entire concept of photography was that you pose for the photo. So even the photographers back then, they were like, wait, smile, okay, cheese, and click. That is how photography was done. And which is why, this entire genre of what is called candid wedding photography, that is actually how this entire genre came about. Now, candid wedding photography is a very loose term. I mean, we had to explain it a lot in the beginning, but I think that's how it came up. So now today, I mean, I think people understand it more, people accept it more. But back in the day, it was a question that I had to answer many times. Why wedding photography?
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. We will not hold everybody longer before we get into seeing your wonderful images. But there's one interesting question that has come up on YouTube by Naveen V. So he's asking, what is one thing you wish you knew when you started taking photographs?
Wow. One thing I wish I knew. Honestly, you know, I think, wow. I mean, I'm gonna have to think for a second. I mean, that is a good question. I think I would say that I mean, I wish I knew that the camera isn't everything. Okay, so in the beginning, there is something called gear acquisition syndrome. Okay, it's called gear acquisition syndrome. So in the beginning, me and everyone who starts out photography, you blame your inadequacies on equipment. So if I took a bad photo, I would immediately blame it on the camera and said, "Yaar, if I had enough money, I would upgrade and buy this camera, or if I had enough money, I would upgrade and buy that lens." And this is something that it took me many years to actually learn the answer to. That equipment is nothing. Okay, equipment is honestly, I would say maybe 1/5 of what it takes to make a photograph. And if I'd known that when I started, I would probably have worked harder at learning and improving my craft rather than saving money and trying to buy a more expensive lens and a more expensive camera, because it was never ending. Every time I would buy a new camera and a new lens, then something better would come and something better would come. So it's a never ending rat race. And I found myself, stuck in that rat race all the time. And if I had known in the beginning that, with my basic camera along with the kit lens, I would be able to do many great things. I mean, that is something that I wish I had known when I started.
Fantastic answer. Fantastic. So, Arjun, now just take us through your images, and we would like to really just immerse ourselves into that.
Okay, so what I'll do is this. I've got. I was trying to figure out what I should actually show, to people, and what is it that, I mean, how will people on this call benefit? So what I'm going to do is, I think a lot of people typically try and ask, how was this image made? What was it that you went through making this? And many times you're not able to answer that properly on social media and whatnot because it's not an interactive session. So let me do that. So I'm going to show you a couple of images that I had put together. So just give me 1 second and I'll try and bring it up over here. Okay. So hopefully now you should be able to see my screen. Where did it go? 1 second. Let's go.
But then
1 second. 1 second. Okay.
Yeah.
Has it come back?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and show you a couple of images and let us see, how I can walk you through this. So the first image is actually shot in. So this is a photo of a bride. Okay. Now, the reason I wanted to show this photo first is because a lot of people, sort of do a double take and they're like, "Acha, how was this done?" So, so it seems fairly complex because obviously there is the subject right in the beginning, but then you can see that there is an overlay of the bokeh effect in the background on top of the subject as well. So how this is done is actually quite interesting. So the bride is actually not, I'm going to try and see if I can just draw some lines on this. Just 1 second. How do we do that now? Oops. I'm just going to see if I can find the mouse. Okay, 1 second. And I'm just going to make this full screen again. Okay, here we go. So now I'm going to try and find this annotation and okay, draw. So what is happening here is that actually, so this, bride here, she's not actually standing in front of the camera. She's actually standing behind me. So this is actually a reflection of a window. Okay, so this entire reflection that you see here, this is actually a reflection on the window. So this is the window over here. This is all the window. And the bride is actually standing behind me. So I'm sort of angled, towards the, slightly towards the window itself. And the bride is standing over here in front of me. And we've actually lit her using a ice light, one of those constant light devices. And so this is actually reflection. So because the camera is focused on the bride, this what you see behind in the background, this is actually the street lights of Bangkok. Okay, the shot was taken in Bangkok, and this is actually the street lights that is outside the hotel. So by focusing, because the camera is focused very closely on the bride, we've been able to throw out of focus everything that was in the background. So these are actually street lights that were outside the window, and by using the reflection as the main source of the main source of light on the subject, we were able to create this image. So again, it's really not very complicated. Obviously, it took a little bit of practice to be able to do it, but I think once we were able to do it, it was great fun, to execute. So obviously, what I can.
Complication is probably in visualizing and figuring out that this can be done. So
But once we were able to do it, then I think we were able to quite easily do it. So obviously, if there are any questions that are coming up, I can always pause and explain. So, but I can't see the questions now. So, Jesse sir, if
you
there are any questions, you let me know.
so
Okay. So now,
for them, but or if they ask, then I'll ask you. Don't worry. You continue. So you would have to probably change your angle slightly so that your reflection doesn't come, or
yes.
was it because that she was brightly lit by ice light, so you are not at all visible now?
A little bit of both. I think a little bit of both. We had put the room into complete darkness, so it was a little bit of both. I had to hide in a way, so I'm sort of crouched, just on the bottom of the floor, and I'm holding the camera up like this, so the least amount of reflection of the camera is coming. But in the original, in fact, this image is not edited much. This is just barely corrected for saturation and things like that. So in the original image also, we were not there in the reflection. So luckily, we didn't have to do much post production work. Now let me go to the next one. Okay. So this image, again, this is a fairly, I wouldn't say an old image, but it's probably 2 to 3 years old. So one second, I'm just going to escape this for a second. These annotations, are you still able to see the annotations, or is it just on my screen?
We are able to see.
Okay.
I don't know how to really remove them.
It's still there, right?
It's still there.
Okay, so I'm just going to clear it. Okay, clear it. Okay. So this one actually is this is a this is a shot that took some time to execute. So this honestly was not something that was planned. Okay, now this is something that we were just it just sort of happened on the spot. Now here we have the reflection of the couple in the ring over here. Oops. Okay, in the ring. So this reflection took some practice. Okay, so what is happening is they are lit using one light. I think it was a Godox AD, maybe AD, one of those Godox lights. Okay. This since 3-4 years ago, I think it was one of the early models, and it is positioned slightly off camera, off reflection on the couple, so that we were able to bring them out, bring their reflection out a lot more. And the camera was focused on the ring very closely. So I was using a macro lens here. I think this was a 100mm macro lens. And even a slight movement of the camera left or right would actually, shake the image. So, I think luckily I had a tripod at the time. So we put the camera on the tripod and we arranged the rings like this. Now, this was only possible because these rings were flat. Okay, now after I took this image, I got many requests to try and repeat this image for other people again. But for one reason or the other, we were never able to repeat it the way it came out in this original. So this ring was flat. Now, because the ring was flat, the reflection that came out of the ring was not warped in any fashion. So that was, I think we were lucky with that. So then what happened was this. Oopsie. Okay, again, it's gone. 1 second. Sorry. I'm pressing all the wrong buttons, I think. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to try. Okay, here we go. Okay, so basically, what I think I'm going to not use the drawing function. I think that is what is causing. Yeah, I'm not going to use the drawing function. So, so basically, because the ring was flat, we were able to get this shot, and it took a lot of effort to be able to place that ring there exactly the way it was. And so I was telling the couple, okay, thoda sa one step to the right, one step to the left, one step aage, one step piche. Okay, thoda sa jhukna. So that was what was happening all throughout. Okay, so finally they were also very cooperative. So I think we were able to nail this shot, but it took around 15-20 minutes to complete. And I should tell you that in wedding photography, 15-20 minutes is like 6 hours in other photography fields. 15-20 minutes is a lot of time because you don't really have much time to be able to do too many things. So that is
Right.
how this picture was taken. So it's one of my favorites so far. In fact, I have it framed and it's hung in my office. But I'm glad that we took the effort, and I'm glad that this came out nicely. So now the next image that I'm going to share. Okay, now this actually it's not that complicated. It's not a difficult image to take. I think it came down to the fact that this is okay. I should say that this is a two-person job. Now, this image can only be made with the help of a photographer as well as a lighter. So you need someone who is skilled in lighting to be able to hold the light exactly. So what is happening here is in the middle of the image, I'm going to try and see if I can do it again. Okay, here we go. One second. So in the middle, I mean, right, okay, why am I getting a line? Okay, hold on.
Yeah, you've drawn the line.
Drawn a line. Okay, so I got a line first. So over here in the middle of this image, this is where the flash has been positioned, right underneath their bodies, and the distance of the flash to the subject is very, very important in these cases, because this in fact this style of lighting is called rim lighting. So rim lighting obviously is something that takes a little bit of practice. There's only one source of light here. It's just the one flash behind them, used as a rim light. So this flash, having the person who is alongside you, having that communication going is very essential. So even if the flash goes by 1 inch forwards or backwards, or 1 inch top and down, that causes a lot of problems to the shot. So you have to be, you have to get it right the first time, or you have to get it right, in camera as much as possible. So in this case, basically the flash is just below the couple, somewhere here. Okay, so it is just below the couple. I'm just trying to make a drawing to show where it is. So the flash is actually behind the couple, probably at waist level, and it's angled up slightly upward so that the beam of light goes straight towards the couple. And we have gridded the flash using a honeycomb grid. But that's the only modifier that's on the flash. I think it was a Godox 8200, if I'm not mistaken, and there was a honeycomb grid on top of it. So what the honeycomb grid is doing is it is sending the light in a directional fashion. It's sending the light straight forward. Otherwise, the light would scatter everywhere, and the light would, hit everything around them. But in this case, because it's a directional light, it's going exactly in the direction that I wanted it to go. So finally, that is how this image came through. This was actually shot in Dubai. So this sunset that you see behind them, we were lucky to get a good sunset. The sky turned nice and pink and blue and all sorts of nice colors. And this, this shape of the heart that is there in this image, I think that is, that is something that we were just lucky. I mean, it's somewhat like I like to think it's a heart. It's somewhat like a heart, but I think we were lucky to to get that. So that is how this image was made. So again, very, very simple one light setup. It's not complicated at all. So to everyone who's listening to this call, if you don't already know it, rim lighting is something that is a lot of fun to do. It's a lot of fun to creatively play with. And the way the light spills and wraps around your subject, that is what we are going for. So if you see the wraparound that is happening here,
Yeah,
that is happening around very well around their faces. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next one now. But for me to do that, I need to exit this 1 second again. Just going to go back to the pointer mode. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is so now this image. Okay, now this image actually was shot this year only. This was, I think, shot in January of 2020, just before all this new coronavirus and all happened. So this is one of my, this is an image that is shot during the Sangeet ceremony of a wedding. In this case, the bride, her name is Anushka. She, it was her turn to come out on stage and do a solo dance. Till this point, a lot of dances had already happened. I think almost 15 dances had happened. So everyone was waiting for the grand finale, and the grand finale always is the bride coming out, and there's a lot of excitement in the air because everyone's waiting for that moment, because everyone knows that's going to be the moment of the Sangeet ceremony. So she came out and she started dancing, and I knew that this is the time when I need to create something spectacular, because this is that one point in time where everything's electric. Everyone's excited, everyone's clapping, everyone's hooting, because everyone's excited, right? Because the entire audience, they've all come to see the bride and groom dance. So she started dancing, and and I knew that at this time there is going to be a popper. So there was that the event planner had put in place one of those machines that releases confetti. So it's called a popper in the industry. So I knew there would be a popper going off, and the popper should create some nice effect onto the image. So what I did was I made sure my focus was locked on the bride, because otherwise what happens is your autofocus, when something comes in front of the camera, the autofocus starts hunting at that point, and you wind up with a lot of blurry images. So I anyway use back button focus most of the time. So my thumb was stuck onto the back button focus part of the camera, and I knew that I had focus on the bride. And out of the corner of my eye, I was looking at the event planner, and she was wildly telling someone on the walkie-talkie, "Chalo bhai, abhi start karo, popper start karo." So I knew it was going to happen sooner or later. So I got my position. I got a light, and so there is one light to the right of the stage. I think it was an 8200 with a octagonal softbox on top of it. And so she said 3, 2, 1, go, and the popper went, and I went click 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 on my camera, and luckily I was able to get this shot. And I mean, to me, this image symbolizes the happiness and the joy that exists at a Sangeet ceremony. Because here we have a bride. This is one day before her wedding day, and she's dancing her heart out. She's dancing for the audience. She's dancing for a groom. She's happy. The entire audience is happy. Everyone loves this moment. And to me, this is what really, really, captures in one image the grandness and the amount of joy that an Indian wedding has. So that's why this is one of my favorite images. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to try.
I have a small question here.
Sure.
You said that you were aware that this is going to happen because the event planner, the wedding planner had planned something. So how important it is for you as a wedding photographer to really be in coordination, close coordination with the wedding planner? If there is
Very important. Very important. So what we do is, we, as part of our process, before we actually go and execute a wedding, we have what is called a pre-production discussion with not just the client, but the wedding planner as well. So we ask them for, in this business, there's something called a show flow. Okay, show flow, or it's also called event flow. So what the show flow has is, it has a minute by minute breakdown of what is going to happen. So let's say bride enters, spotlight comes on, sound is cued, AV is cued, then this happens, then some dancers come in. So before we actually shoot the event, we ask for this document, and this is something that most event planners do. So once we have this document, we know exactly what is going to happen. So it is very important to know what is going to happen, because many times there are surprise elements. So sometimes what will happen is, maybe the groom is planning to surprise the bride, or some friends are planning to surprise the couple, or it might even be a surprise element. Like once, what happened was, the entire stage opened up, and a star performer came out. So many times there's a star performer that that people are not aware of, that this person is coming. Maybe it could be it could be a big Bollywood star or someone. So many times people are not aware. So what I tell the planner and the client always is, it doesn't matter if everybody else is surprised, but I should not be surprised. We should know exactly what is going to happen when. So that actually gives us what is called time to, I wouldn't say plan, but it gives us a general understanding of what is going to happen. So you're able to really, you're able to improvise much quicker rather than be caught completely off guard.
Yeah, thank you for this information. I think that will be useful for many budding wedding photographers.
So let me go to this one. So this one is, again, this is an interesting image, because this was a north-south wedding, and north-south weddings are always interesting for me, because I am also my wife Prerna is a Punjabi, and I am a South Indian. I'm from Kerala. So so always interstate, shall we say, two states wedding is something that is close to my heart. Now, in this case, the bride is Punjabi, and the groom actually was belonging to Tamil Nadu. So they had a South Indian ceremony as a wedding. So as you can see, she's dressed up in a South Indian fashion. Even though she is a Punjabi, she's dressed up in a South Indian fashion. So this wedding was in Jaipur, and she said, "Listen, Arjun, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. I'm in a hurry." So I said, "Listen, you have to give me 2 minutes, and 2 minutes is all I need from you. And I want to take a picture." So as it so happened, the wedding was in the daytime. So when I was taking this picture, it was approximately 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And as you know, sir, as you know, 12 o'clock in the afternoon is not the time to make portraits. That is not the time to be doing anything related to photography in the sun.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had to find, something interesting, or I would have to shoot in the shade. If I shoot in the shade, I mean, you could use light and you could do something. But as it so happened, this was a regular wall, and I saw that there was this pattern that was coming on the wall, and it was just the pattern from one, I think, beam that was going there, and there was just this one pattern. So I knew that if I could try and do something with light and shadow, and that's pretty much what we did. So I put her there, and luckily in my bag I had a prism. So it wasn't any special prism. It wasn't some fancy modifier. It was that simple 50-60 रुपए wala prism that you get at the stationery store जो बच्चों को सिखाते हैं कि 9th standard, 10th standard physics में क्या होता है. So it was that simple prism, and it was in my pocket. And I said, okay, this is a good time for me to try something with it. So I held it up, and the way prisms are, it takes sunlight and it breaks it up into what is called the 7 colors of light, and that is what you see in this image over here. So it takes a bit of doing, because what happens is when the light goes, it doesn't go straight. If this is the prism, the light goes angular after that. So to get the broken up light in a certain spot, you have to really manipulate that prism, as much as possible, just so that it goes in the right place. So I know. So I think tukka se ho gaya. We were holding it, and I asked my assistant, you hold it and you see where it's going. So, and she was saying, Arjun, I don't have time. I have to go. I said, okay, wait. I think we can create something interesting. So I think luckily somehow first try, I think my assistant, he was able to put it in the right place and in the right time. And as he said, sir, ho gaya. So I said, okay, let's do this. Let's do it. So so that's how we were able to get this image. And I told her, okay, just stand here, look to your right, and look down, and stay beautiful. And that's what she did. And we were able to get this image. So I love this image because when you print it, the colors of the rainbow really come out very nicely. And I have this in my office again as a big print. And I mean, I love color. I mean, for me, color is one of the reasons I became a photographer, and I just love color so much. And to be able to see that Vibgyor reflection right on her face and exposing for that actually made this a interesting image. So that was that.
And do you keep so many or some these small props that you can use, something like prism and all? They are always there in your bag, or?
So I try. I wouldn't say always there, but there are many times when small items really help. So prisms, I try and keep a prism or any sort of crystal in my bag, which can sort of diffuse the light. Either you put it in front of the lens. So many times if we're shooting like this, I'll put the prism or a crystal in front of the camera, so that when you shoot through it, it creates interesting effects. There are, I try and keep something or the other, some sort of toy in my bag, which will help me in a situation where I know I need to create something interesting. But if there's nothing interesting around, at least I know I can use something to create something interesting. So either a prism, a pipe, crystal, little gotas that are, the little gotas that are there on salwar kameez and whatnot. I've actually stolen those things, and I've made a small bag, and I've kept all those things in my bag. So something or the other is always there in the bag, and depending on the moment and depending on the opportunity, it's always good to play with them.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I'm just going to put this back into screen mode. Okay, there we go. Now this image actually was shot by one of my team members, but this is still this is not shot by me. This is shot by one of my team. And this is an interesting image again, because I wanted to keep this here, because over here, again, it shows how useful lighting can be in a situation. So Nikhil, one of my photographers, he shot this image, and it's one of, I'm very happy with this image, because technically this area was a very boring area. Okay, it was a hotel lobby, and there was really nothing interesting. There was no interesting element in this entire lobby except for these lights, which are there in a slightly geometrical arrangement. So except for these lights, nothing else was there. And so what we did, what he's done here is he has underexposed the entire image and used again one light as a rim light to create this silhouette around the bride. And that silhouette, I think, is really what makes this image completely, because that that one light that is bringing outlining her features, outlining her nose, outlining her chin, outlining her lips. That is what actually shows her as a bride. And without that, oops, without that, that entire feeling of it being a wedding would not be there. So this is just an example to show again, since we are exploring light, this is just one example to show how light plays such an important role in wedding photography that like nothing else. So light is, light can be used creatively, it can be shaped creatively, it can be applied creatively, and you can create a very normal hotel lobby or a very normal looking area into something interesting, because that is something that only the camera can see. So a human eye would not see this image, only the camera would see this image.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to know how to manipulate the camera into creating something like this. So it's all about keeping your eye open, keeping your vision open, and creating interesting images.
That's very
Um,
interesting. That's very interesting because, as you rightly said, that your eyes will not be able to see, and visualizing, and then knowing that when you do some settings on the camera in terms of aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and you place the subject like this, camera is going to see this way, and it's very important, I think, for every photographer to understand the camera inside out and the way camera behaves in certain conditions. I think that comes in handy in such situations, and that probably keeps you ahead of the crowd that is out there jostling for their own space in wedding photography arena.
True, sir. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to let me just oops again. Okay, uh, I'm not going to. I don't want to bore everyone by showing too many images, but let me like. But this one again is one of my favorites because this is an image I use to demonstrate chance. Now let me describe what is happening here. So in this is during the vidai ceremony of a wedding, and the bride who is sitting here, her name is Vasvi. She is leaving the leaving the wedding venue, and over here this is her oopsie, this is her mother. Okay, now her mother is standing over here. This is her mother right over here. Now at the last moment she decided to roll up the window, okay, because or maybe I think the car's driver, he pressed the button which automatically rolls up all the windows, and because it was hot and the AC was running, so I think he felt that let me try and conserve the AC. So what happened was, just as this window was going up, to reach this point, just as this window was going up, I was standing here and I was shooting her, and I realized that her mother is being reflected on the glass, okay, and she also has this expression of this expression that is so to me bittersweet, because this vidai, this moment, it is a moment that is joy mixed with sadness. So joy because a wedding has been completed and her daughter is now married, but sadness because the daughter is going away. I mean, this is an emotion that every single time, I've shot hundreds of vidais till now, but every single time when this happens, I mean, this is a moment where I also take a pause, I take a breath, because it's a very, very emotional moment. So it just so happened that the window was going up, and I was able to get this shot where where she is looking at her mom, and her mom is reflected in the window. And but the moral of the story here is that this image happened completely by chance, but I saw it happening. So I knew that if I am standing here and the window is going up, chances are that something interesting will be reflected on that window. So I was ready for the shot. So I was actually just standing there. I mean, I'd already taken the shot, I'd taken a picture of her. But when the window started going up, I realized that this is the time where I need to do something. So I did, and I got my camera up. I had, luckily, all the settings were already were already in place. And just as I kept shooting as the window kept going up, so it kept going up, kept going up, kept going up, and there was this perfect time where the window was half, where she's half covered and the mother was still fully reflected, and this is that shot. So again, the moral of the story here is that always in weddings, very much like documentary photography, you always need to be ready with the camera for something that happens. Sometimes, you only have a millisecond to be able to shoot that moment. And if you miss it, it's gone. I mean, there's no way you can recreate it again. There's no way that it'll happen again. But if you catch it, then, you can wind up with strong images like this one. So that is how this was taken.
Very interesting.
So I'm going to show you another vidai shot. Okay, I'm gonna just clear this. Okay, so I'm gonna show you another Vidai shot. That is this one. Okay, now this is again another Vidai shot. Now, same thing. I mean, same funda applies here as well. Now she was the bride was leaving, and suddenly, she hugged her mother. Sorry, hey, she hugged someone else, and that's her mother standing there. And the mother was wiping a tear from her eye, just as she was leaving. And that again is one of those moments which is so, so amazing to shoot, because there are times, in fact, I even feel that maybe I should not be standing there. Maybe I should not be taking this picture, because you want to give people that privacy, and you want to, maintain the sanctity of that moment. But of course, our job is to capture images. So I try and do it as discreetly as possible, and try and make sure that we're not sort of putting our personality into that moment. So you're trying to be as abstract as possible. You're trying to be as much in the background as possible, but still try and make sure that that moment is captured. So okay, so now moving on to happier times. uh, so this again, this the reason I'm showing you this image is, again, reflections. So in a photographer's toolbox, there are many, shall we say, strategies that we use. So reflections, shadows, shooting through something, playing with light, playing with devices like a prism. There are many things that we use, many strategies that we use to get images. So this is again an example of reflections. Now, I shot this image in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This was on the Havelock Island in Andaman, and this beach is famous for. This is called the Radha Nagar Beach, if I'm not mistaken, and it's famous for having clean, beautiful sand. So the moment I landed up there, I saw that it's amazing. It's clear, and there's amazing reflections coming. So I knew that at some point of the shoot, I would want to try and take a reflections image. And and we were lucky again. The gods granted us a sunset. So in wedding photography, I'm sure, sir, you must be agreeing with me that in landscape photography, you only get a good sunset, I would say, once in 30 days.
Yeah.
The others, the other sunsets are all crap. It's all the sun, it's like an on off switch. Suddenly the sun is on, and suddenly the sun is off. There's no golden light coming, there's no clouds, there's none of those interesting things that we photographers love. So this day fortunately happened to be one of those rare days when God says, okay, today I will give you a sunset. And luckily it happened, and luckily we were there shooting, and we had our cameras in our hands. So, and luckily also the bride was wearing yellow. So, that's how we were able to create this image. And I knew that there was something interesting, lurking in that scene somewhere. So, so luckily I had a wide angle lens, and, I was walking along the couple as they were walking down this beach, and we were able to create something interesting.
What kind of light, additional lights you have used other than the available light?
So this is nothing. This is pure available light, no flash, no nothing. Okay, so this is purely shot on available light. I think this is shot using the Fuji Film X-T3 camera. So luckily the camera has a good dynamic range in it. So nothing at all. So it's a pure ambient light image, and just some basic correction for saturation and things like that. But everything is shot on ambient.
All right, great.
So let me, skip forward to a couple more images which I want to talk about. So, so this one again, another. So I'll have, Vidai again is one of those moments that is very very important to me, and I know that if I'm careful, I'm able to get some good images. Even now, this one again. Now this one, the reason I wanted to share this image is because it was pitch black. So Vidai, none of the wedding planners or the decorators, none of them ever account for Vidai, because it's always a function that could happen anywhere. So there's never any decoration, there's never any lighting, there's never any setup, so nothing. So this was actually shot at 4 o'clock in the morning, after the wedding was over. So it was very late at night. I mean, at least 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, and everyone is tired, and everyone knows that the evening is going to end. And again, so the moment the Vidai started, there was no light. It was pitch black, absolutely pitch black. So but luckily again, I was working in a two-person combination, so my lighter was with me. So one of my photographers was with me, and he had my light with him, and I think it was a regular flash, just mounted on a light stand. So this is one of the shots that I say Jai Mata Di, So I pointed the camera. I didn't know if it would focus or not. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know what settings I had on it. But again, luckily, I think these things are committed in muscle memory. So I was able to quickly dial in some settings which I thought would work, and I took a shot. And luckily, this is what came out of it. And the camera focused. Thank God, the camera focused. Otherwise, it was pitch black. The flash fired and back to black again. So, but luckily when the flash exposed this image, this is what came out of it. And I only took 2 or 3 images of the scene because, again, this is one of those moments where you don't want to improve. It's a constant battle, in you as a photographer versus you as a human being. I mean, should I be a part of this moment? Should I not be a part of this moment? That is really what, that is really what goes through your mind at a time like this. So
That's
so
interesting. But do you ever have this kind of discussion with the family or the bride or the bride's mother in particular, that do they want you to capture these moments or they do not want to be there? Does it ever happen?
So most of the time, I think everyone wants these images because when I gave this image to them, they had tears in their eyes. They were like, "Wow, Keith, this is one of my favorite." I mean, the mother actually said that it's one of her favorite, images from the wedding. So I feel that so a lot of this comes down into what we call personal space. Right now, as photographers, one of my first jobs at a wedding is to make people used to me. So what I do is I put a lot of effort into, not being Arjun Kartha, the photographer like this, Arjun Kartha this. So if people see me like this, if people see me like this all the time, holding a camera in front of my face, then they don't see me as a person, right? So it's very important that people see me as a person, okay, and not the camera. So once they get used to you as a person, once they get used to you as a personality, like who you are, what you're doing, then people get comfortable letting you into their personal space. If you approach the wedding like a photographer, then people will not accept you. But if you approach a wedding like a human being, like a friend, okay, then people will see you like a friend, they will accept you as a friend, and then they will let you come into that space which is usually reserved for for family members or things like that. So that's what I do. And I think I'm successful most of the time. In this case, I definitely was. So for one example, so I was probably just a foot away from the bride at this point, but no one found it strange that I was so close by. Because people by the time were used to me, they had accepted me. They knew I was part of the proceedings, and that's what matters.
I think that's very
So
important. What you said is so important because most of the people try and hide behind the camera and hoping that they don't want to be seen, but the camera in turn starts intimidating the people you are shooting. And instead, when you show your face and you just hang the camera as if it is just another part of your body that you are carrying, or clothing that you're carrying on your body, then people don't get intimidated and they become even more receptible to you and open to you, and they behave even more naturally. Am I right?
that's the point. That is absolutely the point. So people should see you as a person and not a photographer. And that is one of the first rules that I normally say for wedding photography, that don't be a photographer, be a person. Be a person that people know, a person with a name, a person with a personality, and not just if people see you like this and if people perceive you like this, then they'll only see you as photographer. So and that is difficult to do because that that is how do I say, is then it doesn't give you access to all the things that you would want to do.
That's good.
Cool. So
Yeah.
let me again just
There is,
scroll
there is
through.
one question. There is one
Mhm.
question from Shreya Sen.
Hi,
Um,
Shreya.
do you actually have your flash off camera now, or do you keep it on camera in some instances?
So I would say 99% of the time I have the flash off camera. I very, 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 very. In fact, I probably don't have the flash on camera at all anymore. In fact, especially after I moved to Fuji, one of the reasons I moved to Fuji was to have a light camera system. So I always have the flash off camera. So which means I always work in combination with another person. So I always have one person with me, who's my lighter, and so it's always a two-man job. So it's
Yeah.
the communication with the lighter is always it's like isharo like "Wahan jao, wahan jao." So yeah, so most of what I do nowadays either is ambient or is off-camera flash.
But in this particular case, this image,
This is off camera. This is off camera. So, like I was saying, it was complete darkness
okay,
during this shot, and so luckily, that communication worked. The lighter knew where to be. I knew where to be. I think practice sort of helped, and everything was correct. And I was able to get this one shot, and then back away and let this moment finish.
fantastic. Yeah. Let's move ahead. Yeah.
So let me. So again, now this is again. I'm not going to go too much into this image, but just I'm going to say that this is again an example of reflections. Reflections again is something I love. I love finding reflections, and this was shot at 5:45 in the morning. Okay, so this is the ITC property in Goa, and what you see over here is actually the lobby of the hotel, and and so this. Oops. Okay, so this is the lobby of the hotel, and so what I did was there's the couple in the middle, and I put one flash behind them. So the flash is actually firing almost at full power, and it's helping to sort of bring out and isolate the subject in the middle of it. Otherwise, it was completely dark. But that reflection that is coming on the water, the reflection of the pillars, the reflection of the roof, the reflection of everything that's happening over there. I mean, that was something that stood out to me, and it wasn't something I planned. It was, in fact, I had gone to do a recce of the shoot, and suddenly I looked back and I saw that happening, and I was like, oh, that's nice, that's nice, that's nice. Let's do something with this. And that's how wedding photography happens. Suddenly you see something, that, wow, okay, this is good, this is amazing, and we can do something with it, and you have to very quickly execute that idea, otherwise it will go away. And this was just as the sun was about to rise. So on the top right hand side of the frame, you can see a golden light in the sky. That is where the sun was just about to rise. So probably in another 1 minute, 2 minutes, the sun would have risen, and then the sun would have thrown everything. There would have been a huge highlight in that area, and I wouldn't have been able to make this image. So I was able to make this image because we got up very very early, and we were on site very very early. So probably at 5:30 we were on site. Must have woken up at 4 o'clock or something to reach the venue, and that's how this one was made.
And birds happen to be there.
Birds happen to be there. Birds are something I was waiting for. So I saw the birds flying around, and I knew that. So in many of the frames, the birds weren't there, and I knew that if I just wait over here, those birds were going round and round, and I should be able to get a good shot with the birds. So I kept waiting, and so I had a walkie-talkie with me, and I was using the walkie-talkie to communicate with the subject, which is the client. And I was saying, okay, guys, just wait over there. Okay, just stand exactly like that and keep waiting. So they were like wondering, why is Arjun making us wait? What is it? So I was waiting for those birds to cross. And luckily they crossed at the right time, and I hit the shutter button. I was able to. And I also knew, because the flash was firing at full power, I knew my flash recycle time was very slow. So I knew that I had to time everything properly, because if I went click 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 like I normally would have, then the flash would not have recycled.
Right.
So so I had to wait for exactly the right moment, and then pressed it once, and luckily this is what came out.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So again, more reflections. So birds, crossing a window. The couple was inside the window, and I was outside. So again, an example of reflections. This is again what I use. This is an example that I use for light and shadow. So so this is actually, so light and shadow obviously is something that we all go crazy about. This is a jali. So the light was coming through a jali. So believe me, you would not, nobody like I didn't notice this. Okay, it was a small jali. Probably the size of the jali was this much. Okay, and there was a small patch of light that was coming through it, and there was a small reflection of the jali that was come on the wall. But as I passed it, I suddenly saw it, and I said, "Wow, okay, this is interesting. Maybe we can create something here." And I had no hopes from it. I thought, "Okay, let's just try." But luckily, the Nupur and Akshay who are in this shot, they are such a fantastic couple, and such fantastic chemistry between them. So all I did was I told them, "Okay, listen, guys, stand here, look at each other." And the way she looked at him at this point, I think that expression in her face, the love in her eyes, the smile, on her lips, I think those things are impossible to replicate. It just happens naturally. So she looked at him, she was in love with him. And and that is what we're going for. I mean, even though this jali and all is just effects, these are all effects that we photographers use to to spice up an image. But that expression on her face, the way she's looking at the groom, the things on her eyes, those things cannot be replicated, and those things cannot be done magically, and that is what to me made this image.
This is this is one of the few images which is black and white.
I love color.
Otherwise, very hard to locate black and white images in your portfolio.
Yeah, I'm a color photographer. I love color. Color is one of the reasons I became a photographer. So I love color. Of course, there are times when black and white really helps, and but in general, my mind sees things as color. I always see things as reds and blues and greens. I don't see things as black and white. Um, now the reason I've shown this image is because again I wanted to highlight how important it is for us as photographers to be documentarians. Okay, that's not a word, but to be able to document what happens at a wedding. Now the story here is that the couple. I mean, this was a wedding in Delhi, and there was a lot of preparations that had gone into it. There was a lot of planning that had gone into it. But 2 days before the wedding, the weather forecast said it's going to rain. And this is December. Okay, so this is December in Delhi, and it's very unseasonal for it to rain in Delhi in December. And everyone went into a panic, and everyone was worried. So the whole day, everyone kept checking the weather forecast. Is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? Is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? And as luck would have it, the moment the Bharat landed, it started raining. Of course, as luck would have it. So so this image, honestly, so the two people in this image are obviously the groom, and the gentleman next to the groom is actually the bride's elder brother. So he was in, a lot of tension the entire day. Is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? So he had kept his umbrella ready, for the groom to come in case it starts raining. So this moment over here is him entering, and I used a flash to be able to, to backlight the drops of rain, and I was able to, get that. And so this image I wanted to make just to put in their album to help them remember that it rained on that day, because none of the other images, is very difficult to capture rain in a photo. I mean, you can capture it in video, you can capture it using audio, but in a photo, how do you capture rain? Because typically the shutter goes up and down, and rain doesn't really expose well in a camera. I mean, you can do it if you go really close, but in general, if you're doing a wide angle shot, it's very difficult to expose water. So that is what I wanted to bring into this picture, because in this one picture, I wanted them to remember that day, and to remember, the smell of the rain, the sight of the rain, the feeling of the rain, because that rain was I mean, in a wedding, rain is a very important factor. And I mean, that rain, the chance of rain is something that drove everyone wild on that day. And it gave people a lot of nervous tension. So I created this image just to help them remember. So that expression on the brother's face, he's really tense. He's been worried the entire day, and the moment the groom is not bothered. So he's got the smile on his face. He's just walking in. He's like, oh, you know what? I've come for the wedding. So he's not bothered about the rain, right? Because for him, he's come for the wedding. But the bride's brother, he's the guy who's organized everything. So he's in tension, and he's really really worried. So that is what that's the story behind this image. Again, reflections, more reflections. As you can see, I love reflections. But so this image is actually inverse. Okay, so I've actually inversed the image. So what you see on top is actually the reflection, and what you see on the bottom is actually the couple. But again, example of sunrise. Early bird catches the worm. So this was a sunrise in Bali. And in Bali, you get these wonderful sunrises, and I was waiting for it, and luckily, it happened, and we were able to get this picture. Okay, now this is the same wedding as the rain wedding. Okay, so this is the bride, and the image that you saw where the groom was entering, that was Ajay the groom. So now the story behind this image, actually, it's an interesting one. So I love bridal portraits. I mean, for me, bridal portraits are, one of the most important things in a wedding. So she was getting ready at a farmhouse, and it was a very, shall we say, normal room. I mean, there was no art on the wall, or there was no fancy curtains, or there was no fancy, arches or anything. Right? It was a plain vanilla room, and because it started raining, there was no time to. I had obviously done a full recce of the site, and I had 1, 2, 3, 4 locations in my mind where I wanted to take the bride. But because it started raining, none of those locations were possible. So she said, you know what, do it here. Do the portraits here. So I'm now, that puts me in a big difficult position, because in that room there was nothing interesting. There was nothing. I mean, it was a plain vanilla room with absolutely no, interesting elements to it whatsoever. And so what we did was, I had these mirchi lights in my bag, and I put the mirchi lights in front of the camera, and she started smiling at the camera, and that's how this image was made. So the idea here is to be able to improvise. So improvisation is part of the game. It's one of the most important things that you have to do as a photographer. And oh, you're back. So so we were able to improvise in this current situation, and be able to create something interesting. So that's how this image was made.
That's, I think all your images, what we are trying to understand here is that you are always alert, you are always observant of what's happening around, what elements you could be using. And I think that is one important take back for everybody who's trying to get into this field, because it is not just about camera, because whatever camera you have will only capture what you ask it to capture, and what you ask is one important aspect, and for that you have to be always alert in your mind and be thinking creatively.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to change this one second. I think my headphone is dying, so I'm just going to put the other one on.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Oh no, I'm not. Hold on one second. Okay, I think we're back with this now. Okay, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to skip forward a little bit to some, I think, because I think we'll run out of time. Okay, so what I actually wanted to do is, I wanted to show some of my commercial work as well.
Yeah.
Now, everything that we've spoken about so far has been weddings. What a lot of people don't know is that I also...
Yeah, we lost your...
Okay, is it better?
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes you have to use the old school way of doing things. High-tech gadgets don't last very long. So yeah, so I just wanted to introduce some of the commercial work that I do. Now, just for everyone on the call, apart from wedding photography, I've also been shooting food for almost 10 to 12 years now. And food photography is one of the reasons why I got into studio photography. So Together Studios actually has a studio. So we are not just an office. We actually have a studio. It's a fully equipped studio with I think 1,000 square feet of shooting area. So having a studio has always been very close to my heart. Every single office space that we've opened has always had a studio in it. And I feel that as a photographer, having a studio is actually what gives you the space to experiment, and gives you the space to try out different things and practice your lighting and things like that. So apart from weddings, so we've also been shooting food for 10, 12 years now. So this is actually a fairly old image. Now, one of the reasons why this is interesting to me is because we had to create a breakfast setup. And, at this, I'm just going to make it full screen again. So so this I'm forgetting. I think the client here was Kellogg's or one of those cereal clients. And so the idea was to create a breakfast setup and try to make it look as appetizing as possible. So here, this is a multi-light setup. I mean, this looks to me like a 3-light setup. So there's one backlight that's coming from behind. There's one key light on the right hand side, and there's one fill light from the left hand side. So this is a multi-light setup, but again, just wanted to show people, an idea of this is the kind of work that I also do. This is an image of beer.
This was shot, I think, for the Vapor Bar and Restaurant in Gurgaon. So if if whenever the lockdown lifts, hopefully it lifts soon, we'll be able to consume some beer again. And the Vapor Bar and Restaurant has some excellent beer. So the idea here was to show that they had three different types of beer. I think the middle was a stout, there's a lager on the right, and there's a wheat beer on the left. So the idea again was to show the beer. Hey, 1 second. ये इसको off मत करो. On करो. Sorry, I think we were put into darkness for a second. So आप जाओ. So yeah, so this was actually done for the Vapor Bar and Restaurant, and so again, this was a multi-light setup. This is, I think, there's one key light from the right. There's one. So here I wanted to bring out the droplets of moisture on the glass. And that is actually the key feature of beer, because it has to look cold. So how do you show cold in a photo, right? You can't, because in a photo you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't actually show temperature. So the only way to actually bring out the fact that the beer was cold was to show the moisture droplets on it. So in this case, obviously there is some natural moisture droplets as well. But so Prerna was a food stylist. So Prerna, apart from being a photographer, she's also a professional food stylist, and she's been a stylist for many years now. So in this, there is actually so what she did was, I think she used a spray can with glycerine in it. So she sprayed glycerine onto the glasses, and that is what actually brings out that feeling of coldness on the glass. Now this is the movie popcorn experience. So this is done for Cinepolis.
This is not fair. It is so. We are all logged in, and you are showing us popcorns and beer and what.
Sir, I am suffering as much as you are. Believe me. So this is so Cinepolis is again one of my we've been shooting for Cinepolis for quite a while now. And this is an image that they had to show as part of the so whenever in the halftime of the movie, they wanted to use an image to show the popcorn. So at halftime, the movie stops, this image comes onto the screen, and they had some text on top of it that says, "Are you hungry? Go and have your popcorn." So here again, the challenge was to try and make it look appetizing, and tell people that, listen, if you haven't bought popcorn so far, you have to go and buy popcorn at the concession stand. So that was a brief, and so we were trying to figure out what is the color palette that people like. So the color palette that we wanted to use here was browns and earthy colors, because at the end of the day, browns, yellows, these are colors that appeal to us as human beings, and these are colors that make us feel hungry. So that is how this image was made, and yeah, so I hope the movie halls open soon, and I hope that we'll be able to go and eat this once again. So again, one example of packaging style photography. So over here, this is an image for Cornitos, and so apart from the nachos that Cornitos is famous for, they're also a very big manufacturer of almonds and cashew nuts and things like that. So here, what we had to do is we had to show what is inside the packet. So which is why we put the packet in the background. Now, one of the things that goes into food photography is you need to choose the best, the best pieces or the best products to be put right in front. So believe it or not, we had an entire, probably 2 kilo or 3 kilo bag of these cashews and almonds. I mean, sorry. And so the food stylist Prerna, in this case, she actually sorted through the entire bag, and with a tweezer chose the most perfect looking almonds to be able to put on top over here so that it looks nice. So that is the kind of detail that goes into food photography, because an image is in front of you, you can keep looking at it, and sooner or later you'll find mistakes in it. Like today also, when I see this image, I'm like, oh, I should have taken out that dot over there, I should have taken out this spot over here, we should have done something. But the thing with food photos is that you can keep looking at it, and it needs to be perfect from every single angle possible.
Right.
The reason I'm showing this image is because this is an image of garam masala. Now, as luck would have it, we do a lot of packaging photography for the masala industry. So we have a lot of clients who come to us, for images of masala. So over the years, I must have shot garam masala at least 10 times, okay, for 10 different clients. So the idea here is, at the end of the day, garam masala is garam masala, which means it's a masala that's made up of 8 or 9 different types of ingredients. So how do you make an image different 10 times? Right. So this is, that is what, always comes to me. So what I always do is I don't look at any of my previous garam masala images. I start from scratch. I put the garam masala in the middle and then I start building the image around it. So that's what happened in this case. And I just wanted to show this image to talk about how sometimes in commercial photography, you are asked to shoot the same subject in different ways. And so every single time, in fact, one of the things I should do after this call is put all those images together and see what is the difference between them. But what I try and do is I try and consciously not be different. I think the way the human brain works is that you automatically, when you're trying to build a shot, your brain automatically creates it in different ways because nobody wants to create the same thing again. So that is how this image was done. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, should I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So again, I'm almost at the end here. I'm not going to bore everyone with too many images. So almost at the end here. So this was shot for Chayos. Okay. Now Chayos again is an old client of mine. So in case you guys, if you've ever been to a Chayos restaurant, you know that what they're really, really good at obviously is chai, apart from other things. So over here, this was actually shot for the winter range. So this is a winter chai. It's a Kadakwali chai for, that was supposed to be part of the winter campaign. So the idea was to show that, that garam chai, when you're feeling cold outside and you're, wearing your jackets and your layers and your sweaters and you've got garam chai coming in front of you. So the idea was to show that. So, which is why what we did was we created a fireplace in the background. So that's in the background, we want to show a fireplace that you're huddled next to a fire. And, and you've got this garam chai being poured in front of you. So the initial shot that we created was just the chai. But what we realized was that it wasn't looking appetizing. Now, chai has to be poured. Now, until you pour it, because when someone pours it and gives it to you, that is when you really, really start feeling that, love for chai. You want that garam chai, when you're feeling cold. So the pouring actually wasn't part of the original plan. And, so suddenly I said, you know what, this is not working. Isko pour karke dekhte hain. So, so Prerna's pouring the chai and we had to try it a couple of times. But that pouring and then that steam escaping from the cup, while it's being poured, I mean, that is what, made this image for us. And that is what actually, made it for the client as well. So
Yeah,
again,
just want to pick this up and take,
that was the idea, that was the idea. So obviously now there's a bit of a complicated lighting setup here because, so there are multiple sources of light. I mean, something for the cup, something for the rim, something for the kettle, something for the back. So I think there are almost 4 different lights here doing 4 different tasks. But ultimately all of them come together to create this one image. So I'm just... So 2 burger shots. Okay, this is shot number 1. This is shot number 2. Both of these are shot for this company called Burger Singh. Oh, sorry. No, wait. This is for Dudley's, and I think the other one is for Burger Singh. But anyway, over here again, the idea was to, show. In fact, even I'm feeling hungry now looking at this. But that was the idea. I mean, we wanted the burger to look appealing. So now there is a school of thought that says that food photography should be very clinical. So, for example, if you see, let's say, McDonald's or Domino's Pizza and, brands like that, they have great photos. I mean, there are obviously great photographers who make those photos, but the style is to make it look very clean. Okay, very clean, very clinical, very, very, clear. Whereas this brief was to make it look, like very, very, shall we say, order in chaos kind of thing. You want to look messy, but obviously it needs to look clean as well. So that was the idea here, which is why we, filled all the ingredients around it, and we've, so that special patty is, just right. It's just been put over there. It's just right, and the idea was to, bring out the cheese and the lettuce and the mushrooms and things like that, so that when you look at it, you really immediately want to pick it up and eat it. So this image was then ultimately used. It was printed out large in the restaurant and it was, placed over there. So everyone who came in, they would look at that and say, "Hame to wo chahiye." Wo jo photo mein, hame wo chahiye. So that was what, ultimately made this image.
Can you go back to the tea image again, because there's one question there now. This one question is from Shivam on YouTube. So flowing chai is dividing the cup with shadow. Is it okay?
See, there's no rules to this game. See, there is no rule that says that everything should be perfect. Everything should be, you should kill shadows wherever possible. honestly, I like shadows. I mean, shadows are what leads to depth. I mean, shadows is what allows your eyes to perceive depth in image. So, see, killing that shadow would have been very easy. In post production, a couple of clicks, we could have
Yeah.
killed that shadow. But I wanted it to be there because I wanted it to, I think that shadow is adding depth to the chai.
Yeah.
And when if I kill that shadow completely, then the fact that the because see, the human eye perceives light and shadows very logically. So in this shot, the predominant source of light is coming from the back. Okay, so it's coming from from the top left corner of the frame into the shot. So if there is no shadow present, then the eye will wonder that there is something wrong. Why is that shadow not there? There should be a shadow there, right? So that is what is happening here, and killing shadows is quite easy in post production. It's quite easy in the camera as well. But honestly, I choose not to do it because I would prefer the image to look more authentic, and I think in this case it worked. So I hope that
I
answered
think
the question.
I think yes, perfect, because I think realism is what is now very important, because without the shadow, the depth perception is gone. It also gives you, in this particular image, kind of sense of the size of the cup as well. Your eyes move around that shadow line, and so I think it is important. So I agree with you.
Okay, so now we're almost at the end. So I'm just going to skip over these images. Again, this is a shot of nachos. I think this was done for Cornitos. This is their main product, the round nachos. And sorry. This is not for Cornitos. This is also Fun Cinemas. This is the this is the nachos that you can buy at the cinema hall, and obviously you go into the movie and you can dip it into that sauce and you can eat it.
Yeah.
And I think no movie experience
That
is
kind of details.
complete without it, so which is why those tomatoes, the chilies, I mean, all of that is to bring out the salsa and things like that. So okay, so that's pretty much it. That is the end of my presentation. So I just I hope that everyone found this useful, and
I am sure, because this has been one phenomenal kind of presentation. There's so much to learn. I wish we could have spent more time on each image that you skipped also, but we could still get the glimpse. Before I get on with my own questions that I have, there are few questions on YouTube that came in between, and I would not like them to go unanswered. Is that first is by Shreya, saying again that, do you have any tips to focus your camera in pitch dark?
So that's a good question. So that is a challenge. Okay, so what I do is, in case it is completely dark, I ask either myself or someone. I ask someone to switch on the mobile torch. Okay, so even this much of light, actually, if you put it like this is enough for the camera to find focus. Okay, so now obviously this is where the the type of camera. This is where the difference between a very high-end professional camera and probably a medium camera or a entry-level camera would have. Whereas a professional camera might be able to get the focus better. But let me tell you that no camera in the world can focus in pitch blackness. Okay, it doesn't happen. It might be the best, the maybe best camera possible, but no camera will focus in low light. So this is the best hack. Okay, so you just hold the camera, just everyone has a flash in this light in their phone now, and you just ask someone to hold it like this. So even if there is just a little bit of light coming on the subject's face, that is enough for you to find focus. And as long as the subject is not moving, and if you're using, let's say, a back button focus system, once you find focus, then you just shoot away, and hopefully everything will go right.
All right, that's a good answer. Um, and then there is one from Arpit Kathuria. Is asking, "Hi Arjun, great pictures." So yeah, we all agree. So my question is that, what flash modifiers do you generally use? Do you also use a mag mask?
So the idea always here is to keep it light. Now so obviously there are two answers here. For my studio work, we use nice big modifiers, but for wedding work, which is what I assume you're asking,
Yeah.
over there the idea is to always keep it as light as possible. Okay, so we don't want heavy modifiers, we don't want big modifiers, because like suppose you take a big octa, like a 120 octa or something, that everyone will see only the octa. They won't see anything else. They won't be able to focus on the wedding. So we prefer small modifiers. Yes, the mag mod system is definitely something that I would recommend. Mag mod is very easy. It's got good quality. It's got good results. So the mag sphere, the mag box. I think that there's a new flash mag flash. I think it's called the mag box or something, if I'm not mistaken. That is something that I prefer. So mag box, there's a Godox beauty dish. The Godox beauty dish is phenomenal. It's very nice. It has a grid. It comes with a grid along with it. A lot of portraits that I make are using the Godox beauty dish. It's very small. It's around 1 foot wide, and it has great results. And apart from that, the Godox Octa. There is a Godox very small Octa. I think it's 1 foot by 1 foot. That's also really nice, and all of them put together, I think, give me really good results.
Thank you. There's one by Monica Singh. What is it you look for while doing wedding pictures? What is there you look in it?
So the story for the couple. I mean, honestly, I would not enter a wedding without first understanding how did boy meet girl, how did girl meet boy. What is it that brought them together? What is the chemistry they share? Why are they getting married? So those are the questions I always ask beforehand, and those are the questions that I usually ask, try and answer using my pictures. So if I'm able to get the chemistry between the couple, then my job is done.
That's fantastic. There are a couple of more questions, but I think I will also have one question linked to them while I ask my own questions. So I've jotted down a few questions while you were sharing your presentation. So my question is that do you believe in number game? And there are two aspects to it: number of weddings in a month or in a year, or number of images in a wedding. So do you believe in number game, or do you believe in less number and more quality?
Good question.
Number and still better quality.
See, I would, yeah, I mean, the answer is a little bit of both. See, I would naturally say that quality versus quantity. I mean, that is where, that is what we all try for. But at the end of the day, see, digital photography has given us this huge advantage that, we did not have many years ago when we started with film. See, I also started in film, and as a film photographer, you knew you had 36 exposures in your role, and you had 4 more rolls with you. So that was your max, the max that you could do. But now digital photography gives you the advantage of you're able to shoot thousands of frames all the time. But I would say that, see, there is a funda in our business. It's called spray and pray. Okay, so spray and pray basically means you go cut, and kuch na kuch to acha niklega usme se. Right? I mean, so that is where the numbers games comes in. But honestly, see, that is obviously wrong. I mean, that is not. Wrong for many reasons. Number one, it increases your post-production headache by a factor of 10. Okay, because when you come back to the office, you obviously have to start culling the photos, and you need to select the good photos from the bad ones. And if you've taken so many photos, then the chances are that a good photo will get lost in all of that, because it is humanly impossible to spend the time and see every single frame from a wedding, especially when you're running against the clock. Because during wedding season, that I have to finish his work today and I need to go and shoot a wedding tomorrow, and you have a lot of field work to do. So when you're in the field, that you have to go back to the office and you have a lot of studio work to do. So the idea is to, I think, find a balance between the two. I would say that, see, there are certain moments in a wedding where I know that more frames will be helpful. So, for instance, let's say, the shot of the bride dancing. Okay, and suppose she's twirling. So when she's twirling, I know that is the time to press the shutter and keep it pressed, because you never know which frame will be perfect. She's turning like this, she's turning. So one of those frames will be perfect. So that is the time to press the shutter and keep it pressed until the movement stops. But not always. So or maybe if it's during a Christian wedding, there is a bouquet toss. So they're tossing the bouquet like this, or even during in an Indian wedding, during the vidai, when she's throwing the rice coolies, behind her. That is the time when you want to get as many frames as possible, because you don't know which one will be perfect. But apart from that, I would say always wait for the moment, compose your shot, take a couple of shots, and that's it. I mean, that's enough. That's usually more than enough.
Yeah, that's interesting answer. Okay, now there is one question from Naveen V. So he's asking, how do you educate yourself to take better pictures every time? And I had jotted down one question myself, which is somehow linked to it. That how do you stay unique in every wedding that you shoot? Don't you ever get into some kind of box thinking and end up creating similar images which you regret later, or you work hard to ensure that every single image that you create is unique? And how do you do that?
See, I'll tell you, that is a good question. I'll tell you. Now, okay, let's take an example. Now, in Delhi, there are, a finite number of hotels. So let's take, for example, let's take ITC Maurya or maybe Taj Palace as an example. I must have shot at least, maybe 15 or 20 weddings at ITC Maurya. Okay, or Taj or whatever. I mean, some hotel. Now, the point here is that it is easy to imagine that they will all look the same, but actually they don't. Okay, now they don't because of a couple of reasons. See, for me, a property or a venue is just a shell. I mean, it is a shell around which the wedding is made. The story of the wedding comes from the dynamics and personalities of the people involved. That is where the story comes from. So let's say the couple involved, their parents, their friends, their relatives, the dynamics that they have. Is it a love marriage, an arranged marriage? What kind of love story have they had? What is the wedding all about? So every single time, even if I feel that I'm shooting at the same venue again, and maybe I'll come back with the same photos, it's not the case. But somehow, I don't know, somehow every time I shoot at the same venue, it doesn't feel like the same venue, number one, because it's a different wedding. And because it's a different wedding, once you start shooting weddings, you'll know that if you put your heart into the wedding and shoot it, like I said, remember, shoot it like a friend. Don't shoot it like a photographer. If you go as a photographer, you will see the same lines, you will see the same, the locations, you will see everything the same. But if you shoot it as a family member, and if you shoot it as someone who's invested in the wedding, then you'll never feel it's the same. And every single time you'll feel it's a different wedding because you are not even thinking about the location. You're only thinking about the couple. And when you're thinking about the couple, you always make new memories.
That's very interesting and a very wonderful answer. Now, I just got one thought while you were answering this. That you shoot as a family, and you mentioned this couple of times in between as well. Have you ever faced a situation when you wanted to be a part of the family, but family did not want you to be a part of the family and were creating obstacles? Why are you seen here? Why are you not doing that? And I know that very rare, but it might happen. Humans are humans.
Never at all. Never has it ever happened. So I think maybe I've been lucky or I've been blessed in such a way. But honestly, if you put your heart and soul into the work that you're doing and you work hard, I don't think anybody on this planet will ever stop you. So if you see, if I think people have respect for, shall we say, genuine hard work. So even if there is a family and I don't know them personally, maybe I only know the couple, maybe I only know the parents, maybe I don't know the chacha, the mama, all those other family members. I've not been introduced to them, but they have seen me from day one, working hard, running around everywhere, being a part of everything, and everyone respects that. Okay, and they know that I am doing it for them. I could very easily put in half the work and still get images and say ki mera kaam ho gaya, right? So people see that and they value that, and they know that this is a professional, this is a person who is working hard for us. So which is why I think everyone opens all the doors possible, and they feel happy that something like this is happening. And which is why I've always, and also remember, weddings are a place where everyone's happy. By definition, people are happy because it's a wedding, right? So everyone's enjoying. So I feel that gives them the extra advantage. That gives people an extra reason to come up to me and say that, "Yaar, tum camera chodo, tum aao daru piyo hamare saath." This. So the reverse happens. Number of times, someone has given me a glass of whiskey and said, "Arjun, you drink this." Okay. Now, as a general rule, I should say that I don't drink at weddings. I don't drink at. I mean, I obviously enjoy a drink when I'm off duty. But on duty, my general policy is not to drink, because this is, for us, this is our workplace. It is our office. And in an office, you need to give it the respect that you would give a workplace. So we never drink. But the number of times a family member has come up to me and said, "Arey, camera member, chodo yaar, ye drink pakdo, tum aao nacho hamare saath." So that happens. That happens a lot. But never has it happened that someone has, been an obstacle or or prevented us from doing what we want to do. It's never happened.
That's great. That's great. There are two questions, and then I think we will start winding up now. One is by Varad J. So, how to analyze number of light sources for product photography? How is the background or ambience color decided for any product photo?
So, okay, the two questions in there. So one is the light setup and the other is the mood of the shot. So I'll answer the second part first. See, the mood of the shot is basis the brief. So before any commercial assignment, before any kind of whether it is food, whether it's product, whether it's fashion, whatever it is, always there will be a brief that you need to clarify with the client. So the question to be asked is, where will the image be used? Okay, is it used for print? Is it used for publication? Is it used for an ad? Is it going to be used for website? Where is it going to be used, right? So depending on that answer, then you can start planning your color space. So let's say the image is going to be used for a brochure. So then you want to ask, what are your brand colors? What are your product colors? What is the color of the brochure going to be? And then maybe you can use those inputs to be able to create a color palette. But in general, in general, what I would usually do is I would let the product speak. So if the product has a warm color palette, maybe it will go with warm colors. Maybe if it's not doesn't have a warm color palette, maybe it'll go with cool colors. So those are the things you need to look at. And also you need to understand what is the brand's personality. So let's say like a brand like Chayos. Okay, Chayos is built on earthy colors, earthy flavors, desi chai. So those are all warm tones. Whereas let's say a brand like maybe let's say Hard Rock Cafe. Okay, now Hard Rock Cafe is essentially modern. It is young. It is energetic. It's those are the vibes that it gives. So which is why then I would use more of blues and greens and colors like that, which are not earthy. So it depends on what is the. I mean, there's so many factors. So depending on what is the brand, what is the brief, what is the idea, that is what would help me choose my colors. See, lighting, there's no rule. Okay, see, you can use one light, you can use two lights, you can use four lights, you can use 10 lights also. There's no rule to what you should use. It all depends on what you're trying to create. So I usually start, the way I would do is I would start with one light. So one light is where I would start because you need a key light, right? So then as I start building my shot, I'll start adding lights, and see, everything is kept over there. Depending on whether I need it or not, then I will start adding it. So never ever given to temptation to use 5 lights just because you have it. So है तो लगाओ यार, पांच लाइट के पैसे दिए मैंने, चलो पांचों के पांचों लाइट लगाते हैं. So never do that. Every light should have a purpose. Every light should be doing something different that the other light is not doing. So that is the only reason. So always add lights iteratively. First one, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, and maybe if required, the fifth. Okay, and that is how you should always light an image. Whether it's product, whether it's fashion, whether it's anything, whether it's a portrait, always build the shot with lights and only use a light if it does something.
All right, all right. There's another question from Monica. What is that you enjoy the most? I also wanted to ask something. Anyway, so what is that you enjoy the most? Food or wedding photography? For me, I'm a very old school. Do you think pre-wedding is worth it? Sometimes it's too much. Your thoughts, please.
Okay, so two questions there. Let me answer the first one first. So between weddings and food, I would never say, I could never decide. I mean, I have been asked this question before, and I think these are two opposing genres. Okay, so wedding is people photography; it's all about events, and food is still photography. The subject doesn't talk back to you. Now, I like doing both because it helps me balance my mind. Now, if I shoot a lot of events, I crave shooting something in the studio because I want to do something different. So I think because these are two polar opposites and these two genres are polar opposites of each other, I think it helps me balance the creativity in my mind, and it helps me balance the energies that I have to be able to do two completely different lines of work, which are not complementary at all. So which is why these are two hats that I wear. I mean, sometimes I wear my wedding hat and sometimes I wear my commercial photographer hat. So it all depends on the assignment. The second one, see, pre-weddings, this is something that I talk to brides a lot. A lot of people come to me nowadays and they say, Arjun, we love your photography, but हमें pre-wedding नहीं करना. Okay, so I go up to them and I say, why would you not want to do a pre-wedding? And they're like, no man, it's too cheesy, it's too it's too like posy, we don't want these posy kind of things, we don't want these cheesy things. So then I have to explain to them that, listen, see the work that I do. Okay, now nowhere in my work will you find something that is cheesy or posed, or I mean, I remember an example. I'd gone to Lodi Garden in Delhi, and I was sitting there and I was enjoying the scenery, and there was a pre-wedding going on, and the photographer actually told the client, he said, madam, aap na Titanic jaise pose banao. Okay, and she was like, what? And he's like, हाँ वो है ना टाइटैनिक में जब मैडम ऐसे ऐसे खड़ी होती है, and the guy is behind her, and he's holding her by the waist, and Leonardo DiCaprio is coming up. आप वो बिल्कुल टाइटैनिक वाली पोज बनाओ. And I was like, I was cringing, I'm like dying inside of me, and I'm like, I'm literally dying. Okay, and I want to get up and tell the photographer, guy, this is not how you do it, and you should never use these words. But that is the problem. So a lot of people assume that a pre-wedding will be cheesy, it will be posy, but the idea here is not to do that, and the idea here is to explore the chemistry between the couple. I mean, what is that chemistry that they share? What is the relationship that they share? And how can those be made into pictures? So for me, it's all about that. And I sincerely feel that pre-weddings are definitely worth it, because the idea behind the pre-wedding, honestly, is not to create something grand or not to create something, out of this world. Honestly, for me, if I am able to give my client 5 pictures that they can frame and they can put on their mantelpiece or on their bookshelf or somewhere, as images before the wedding happened and as their lives were before the wedding happened, then my job is done. So all that is what I start out to do. I mean, as long as I can give them 5 photos that they can frame and they can keep. I mean, like this photo behind me. I mean, see, like this photo over here. I mean, again, it's a very simple photo. It's not something too complicated, but I mean, this was shot in the mountains. You can see the mountains behind them and things like that. So it's not cheesy. It's not posy. It's a it's in fact it's like Jassi sir would say, it's a landscape shot, because it is a landscape shot, except that we've just put a couple in the middle, but that is the idea that we have.
So thanks for this answer that Monica is ready to get married again. So Monica, how about hiring him for
yeah, if you get married again, please hire me.
And guess who's here now? Ramit Batra is also here. He's commenting, and so he's cheering us up. So I think one common thought question that everybody has in their mind today is that how this wedding photography is going to change post COVID-19. Do you see something happening?
Definitely. Definitely. Now, COVID-19 has changed the world. Okay, so it would be, I think it would be too, naive to imagine that it would not change weddings as well. I feel it won't change weddings as much as it changes other sectors. For example, like your hospitality sector and your tourism sector. I mean, these have been changed, I think, a lot and for the long term. See, weddings are basically about enjoyment. Okay, a wedding is a time when not just the couple, but all the guests at a wedding, they have come basically to get away from their regular lives, enjoy for 2 days, celebrate. I mean, the keywords at a wedding are what? Celebration, togetherness, love, family, bonding, joining of families. I mean, these are the keywords from a wedding, right? So these are keywords that are not ever going to go away. I mean, people will always want to get married. People will always want to enjoy their marriage. But in the now with the context of the coronavirus and things like that, there is a new context of safety. Now, nobody wants that they should be responsible for their loved ones falling sick, or vice versa. The loved ones would not want the couple to fall sick because of them. So I feel now that in this context of Corona, there is going to be certain safety measures in place. So they would want smaller weddings, less number of guests, especially in the near term. Who knows, once the vaccine comes out and once all those things happen, then I think things will go back to normal. But in the near term, the focus is going to be on love, but with the overlay of safety. So that will result in smaller weddings, less, no destination weddings. No one is going to go traveling, to far places. So it's all going to be hyper local. It's all going to be, destinations that are within driving distance of your city and things like that. So that's how it's going to change. But the ingredients at a wedding will remain the same.
Yeah, very good answer. I think that's my thoughts also resonate with the same. I think humanity has shown that it will always bounce back from the worst. It has happened in bubonic plague times, and
Yes.
whenever we look at such history, I think humanity has always bounced back, and it will again after post COVID-19. And when is the question? It all depends upon how we
When?
behave in
That
these.
is the $1 million question.
Yeah. We don't know. So thank you, Arjun. It was such a wonderful speaking to you. But before we go, I have just jotted down quickly. I just thought came to me. How about having some quick rapid fire fun questions?
Oh,
So
I'm always bad at this.
not much because I was not initially. It was not planned. So I just thought, why not do it? So first is light or shadows.
Light.
Light. Wedding or pre-wedding.
Pre-wedding.
Small team or large team.
A small team, any day small team. Because large team has a lot of more administrative hassle. So I'm more of a manager with a large team. So small team for sure.
Okay. More lights or simple lighting setup.
Simple light, natural light. The more lights you use, the more complicated it is, and you lose out on the natural emotion. So, natural lighting is what I would say.
All right. Tea or coffee.
Coffee, sir. I'm a hardcore coffee drinker.
Okay, great. So gol-guppas or papdi chaat.
Gol-guppas. I've already covered that part. I love gol-guppas. In fact, I should just say here that I'm so spoiled at weddings. See, at a wedding, you get unlimited gol-guppas, right? So you know, as much as you want, he'll give it to you. So, recently I went to a stall where they were giving gol-guppas, and after 5, he stopped. Okay, and he looked at me. I'm also looking at him. I'm like, why is he stopped? He said, sir, ho gaya.
These are
Kya
my
ho gaya? He said, nahi sahab, 10 rupees ke 5 hi milte hain. I'm like, oh, I have to pay for it.
good one. And last is that in these Corona times, so Corona or Kingfisher?
Corona, sir, Corona. I mean, Corona, the good Corona, the nice cold Corona, any day.
Good one. Thank you, Arjunji. It was such a wonderful time. I think I had a blast. There was so much of learning, looking at your images, how you utilize available conditions, how you visualize them, and how do you look at those situations and visualize it in the terms of the final image and outcome. I think that has been phenomenal. And anybody who's trying to get into wedding photography or either is struggling with wedding photography, trying to get creative, I think it is going to be one wonderful session for them to watch. And thank you again for accepting the invite. Thank you again for sharing your heart out, your soul out here on this platform.
Thank you so much. No, I mean, in fact, I must commend you on taking the time to, create such initiatives. I know, spending 2 hours like this every day, every other day takes a lot of time and effort, especially when, you're doing it just for the love of it and not for any earning opportunity. I mean, this is just for the love of photography. So, I mean, hats off to you, sir, for, for hosting this session, and thank you for calling me.
I think the best thing we could have done in these difficult times is to give it back to the photography fraternity, which has given us so much in past. And I think I must admit here, I am also a little greedy because even I get to learn from these sessions a lot, and I get so much of inspiration from these sessions. So yes, and cheers to everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. Take care.